What is up, guys? Michael here from TYT YuGiOh, and today I thought I'd come at you with a discussion on a card that is not really being very talked about in today's metagame, and that card, obviously, as you can see, is Solemn Scolding. This card is relatively old, so if you're newer, you might not have heard of it, so I'm going to go over the effect real quick. It came out of new challengers and was reprinted in the Mega Pack. As you can see, I have the Mega Pack one. It's a counter trap at spell speed 3, just like all the other Solemn cards, and its effect reads: if this is the only set card in your spell and trap zone, when a monster would be summoned, or a spell card, trap card, or monster effect is activated, pay 3,000 life points as a cost, negate the summon or activation, and if you do, destroy that card. Obviously, it has a pretty hefty cost at 3,000 life points. However, the effect is absolutely ridiculous. Resolving this card is insane. It negates literally anything in the game. Anything from inherent summons to activated effects, things that are already face up on the field, ignition effects, trigger effects, everything. It just stops literally everything. The only condition is, again, you have to pay 3,000 life points, and it has to be the only set card in your spell and trap card zone. Keep in mind, that does mean you can activate it if you have face-up spell or traps, right? So you can have like a Dragonic Diagram in your field spell zone, and you can still Scolding. You can have a Fire Formation Tanky, and you can Solemn Scolding. So it's not like super dead if you have like continuous spells or traps in your deck. Now, the reason I think this card hasn't been played in previous formats is because most decks had at least one or two set spells or traps that they had to have set on their board, and so Solemn Scolding didn't really interact well with the rest of the deck. If you think back to when Metal Foe were arguably the best deck, they had to have their counter trap, their counter, and even sometimes their continuous trap set, depending on how they opened. If you think back to things like Monarch format, you always had to have a set Prime in the mirror match and a set Stormforth in order to tribute off your opponent's monsters. And even all the way back to things, like Necroz format, Necroz didn't need this, and things like Burning Abyss and Cleafort already played way too many traps to support it. So this card really never had the opportunity to really shine and really do anything, aside from maybe Patrick Hoban's Pepe list. I think he played at least one or two of these with Ariadne in his deck, but even then, it was more of a tech rather than, a staple in the competitive front. So, but I think right now, this is the card's time to shine, the post-Maximum Crisis format, and here's why. So, the two top decks, which are True King Dinosaur and the Masterpiece Turbo deck, I think can really support this card really, really well. Zodiac, which is probably the third best deck, probably can't support it as well, but definitely for those top two decks, I think this card works great in both of them. And here's why. So in both of those two decks, you do not pay very many life points to activate your effects. Think back to things like Cosmo or Cleafort, where you were constantly paying life points to activate effects. So Solemn Scolding's 3,000 life point cost was really quite hefty. But now, since you were no longer paying life points to activate effects outside of something like maybe Instant Fusion, Solemn Scolding's 3,000 life point cost is much less substantial compared to the rest of the life points that we're playing. Keep in mind, like I said, this is going to be best in the True King Dinosaur and the Masterpiece Turbo decks. Those decks aren't really playing Strike, so again, we're not really playing very many life points either as part of our main strategy or the supporting strategy, at least right now. So the reason I think this card is playable is because it stops all of the super problematic cards in the format. It stops the True Kings, it stops Masterpiece, it stops Ghost Dash, it stops Draconic Diagram. It literally stops anything that your opponent has, and if you played it at the right time, it can play a complete blowout because, again, you can really stop. You have the option of stopping absolutely anything you want with Solemn Scolding. Now, if we look at the two top decks, those being True King Dinosaurs, they basically play no traps. Some lists play like an Imperial Order. I saw Michael State's list that he topped a case tournament with, and he played 3 Strike, but he said he was going to move them to the side deck. So they're really not playing any traps, and they don't have any quick play spells really either in the main deck unless you're maining something like Cosmic Cyclone. And so Solemn Scolding is almost always going to be live in terms of it being the only set card in your spell and trap card zone. And if you look at the Masterpiece Turbo deck, that deck does play a lot of spells and traps, especially because they play Card of Demise, but all of those spells and traps are continuous. And so unless in the fairly unique situation where you Card of Demise and then draw all spells, then this is not going to be like super great, because generally you're not going to want to like activate all your spells face up. Although you could. I don't think that's necessarily optimal, but you definitely could, even in that worst case situation, just activate all your spells face up after resulting card demise, and then set the Scolding, and then the Scolding would be live, because again, it's the only set card in your spell and trap card zone. And the traps in True Draco are obviously continuous, and so there's nothing wrong with like flipping those up in the standby phase and using their effects, tributing them off for your masterpiece and stuff like that, and then having your Solemn Scolding live as well. So I think going first, this card is great. It's even, I don't know if I would say it's better than Ghost Dash, but it definitely hits more cards than Ghost Dash. Obviously, Ghost Dash hits like 1,600 cards in this game. This hits like literally every card in the game, plus summons as well. So its effect is really powerful, and I think it's finally viable in the some of the best decks of the format right now. Even if you don't feel like main decking it, I think it's a great pick for the side deck. Again, especially in things like True Draco, where if you know you're going first, you're not going to be playing your Ghost Dashes and your hand traps anyway, both because of card demise and because they're not always the best going first. And so if you want to side into Scoldings, that's a really great option, because as a trap, it is best going first, and you will see it with all your draw cards. Now, in terms of how many you should play, I'm not really sure. Obviously, having multiples is not the greatest thing. If you do have multiples, you can just set one, hold the rest in your hand, and then that one will be live. But other than that, I think that you might just want to play one or two so that you don't really necessarily see multiples. I know that personally, I've been testing out one main decked in my True King Dinosaur list that I'm going to be playing this format, and I've been liking it a lot. It's coming clutch, and stopping things like Ghost Dash and the summons on Masterpiece and stuff. So hopefully I've turned you guys on to a cool tech that you can play this format. Not necessarily in place of other things, but perhaps in addition to your more expensive and obviously more staple cards like Ghost Dash and stuff like that. So let me know in the comment section down below what you think of Solemn Scolding in this format. Do you think it's best as just like a budget option, maybe as an alternative to Ghost Dash, or do you think it does have a place in the metagame? And I'll see you in the next video, but until then, this has been Michael from TYT YuGiOh, signing out.